And so this is Christmas. Oh no, it's not. It's
No,
over now. It's all over now, Pat. War is over.
yes, it is.
This is over.
Yeah.
How was your day?
Actually, it's very quiet day, Jude. We were here, well, myself, my wife, my middle son, and my wife's sister. It was just the four of us. Jude, it was
Mhm.
that quiet. I opened a bottle of wine at 2 o'clock, and that same bottle of wine was on the go at 8 o'clock. That's how quiet a day it was.
Did your wife have you bound to a chair until 2 o'clock?
No, it was, Jude, we have a sort of family tradition. I have three sons, and their families all came down here
Yeah.
on 2 days before it on the Sunday, and we had the turkey and the ham and all the rest of it. So that's really our Christmas. Then you see when they've got their own families, so they stay in their own houses and so on. So on Christmas Day, it's just too awkward for
Yeah. Oh
all the
yeah.
kids with all
Yeah.
the presents and so on.
Definitely.
So,
Definitely.
but it was like we had a very sort of quiet day,
Hmm.
but it was nice. I spent most of the day reading.
Well, we were over in London, and I have two
Mm.
sons there, and we spent the day before Christmas Eve. Was everybody going to one of the sons' houses with children and
Yeah,
all? And then the next day on Christmas Day, it was reversed. The other son and everybody came into him. It wasn't all, when I say everybody, it's not that many. There's like two grand daughters, one grandson, and actually one little Ukrainian boy. One of my one of my sons and his wife have been, what would you say? I was going to say harboring, but that's not the right word. Have been putting
well,
up,
that's a dangerous word. Uh,
putting up a Ukrainian
Providing shelter or asylum or
a
something.
shelter, yeah, to a Ukrainian woman and her grandson.
Uh,
And I gather that she has also got another daughter somewhere in London and maybe another grandchild. But it was a full house, and I pretty much enjoyed it, you know. Um,
mm,
I like yourself. I was pretty reasonably moderate in my drinking, although there
mm,
is always a temptation to keep going too much. And I see you mentioned turkey, Pat. I didn't get turkey at all, and I wasn't.
mm,
I had no sense of being deprived. I mean, I'd eat turkey; it was put in
mm.
front of me. But younger people seem to be moving away from meat. The number of people, well, one of my sons would not be a vegetarian, but the other one would be a vegetarian, even a vegan, and then his wife as well, although their kids
Uh,
are eating meat. Um, I was reading an article. I was talking about turkeys, um, and it made me think. It really did make me think. As I said, I would eat turkey if it was put in front of me, but on the other hand, I wouldn't miss it, and didn't miss it this year. The phrase, I just realized that the phrase from this article, the phrase pecking order comes from
uh,
Turkey. Did you know
uh,
that?
vaguely, I
I,
have to
I
admit,
had
I
no,
did
I
not.
never thought of it. I'm too dumb to think. But pecking
Uh,
order is, they peck each other. Their hierarchy within the group is very clearly
yeah. I
established.
remember vaguely reading that somewhere.
Uh,
Genuinely did, but
yeah,
hey, let's get this clear. I don't even remember why I read it or how I read it.
yeah. Well, the point this guy was making is that this pecking order gets intensified even when they're put
Mm,
indoors. You know what we used to call deep litter for
uh,
hens, where there's
uh,
thousands of them crammed into a space, deprived of natural light, and that the pecking order becomes more intense because they're so crowded in
yeah,
each other. And to avoid them doing damage to each other, I gather it's a standard practice to cut off the end of the beak of the turkeys. And apparently, this
mm,
isn't quite as it's not as easy as cutting your nails. It's a bit more painful for them, but it doesn't stop them pecking. They still keep pecking, but it's just they've got a blunter instrument. Um,
yeah,
the concentration of feeding, naturally enough, is to make them as plump as possible in the shortest possible time.
mm,
Breast meat, meat especially. And the great majority of them, I gather, in these sort of turkey farms is through artificial insemination. So
yeah.
um, they go through all that and then they die, then they're killed.
Uh,
Uh, it's a terrible. I find myself more in sympathy with the natural world every year, Pat. In a sense, is
I,
you
but
think
I just like I have said it before. if I had the choice again, I would definitely not eat meat. But here's the problem about all that. I hate vegetables for starters, right? So
Yeah.
that's a major issue.
Yeah.
Secondly, look at then the other side. I had a discussion many years ago, and this fellow pointed out to me, and you know, he had got a lot of sympathy. But he says, "But look at the natural world. Animals kill all other animals to eat." So he says, "We're not doing anything that's not in the natural world." He says, "Even birds kill other birds to eat." So he says, and so on. But you're dead right. What we're doing, force feeding animals, treating them very, very badly. There's someone jars with me as a human being that we should other species should be treated this way.
Yeah. You see, I take a point, all right. I mean, nature red in tooth and claw is true. Like
Yeah.
the
Mm,
things that animals
mm,
do to other animals is something awful. I mean, the thing we're
yeah.
talking about, the pecking order,
What
that's
what
pretty.
was what was dear man and the famous guy said survival of the fittest? What do you call him? The first
Oh, hi, Darwin, was it?
Darwin.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But you see, we're sort of caught two ways. We're being very philosophical here today, Pat, but we are
yeah.
caught two ways. In the one hand, we're all animals. But we're
Mm,
also a particular type of animal. The only animal can do really sort of rational thinking. So we're able to make
yeah,
choices in ways that turkeys and so on couldn't do. Uh,
yeah,
so in a sense, you could argue that that leads to cruelty. Like when I grew up on a farm, and I thought nothing of hen's neck being wrung, and in fact I've wrung a few myself. And
mm,
poor old devil of a thing would jump around the yard for about 5 minutes afterwards. And
yeah.
we would have turkeys around, and we'd carefully look after them. And then one of them would be killed and hung, and then put on the table. The insides
And eat
taken
it.
out, washed, put in the oven, and then oh, great, the lovely smell of turkey. Let me eat this turkey that was running around a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that that's good for us, really. Um,
No, no, but not the old. Um, if you have a child with sort of autism or someone, one of
yeah,
the questions a psychiatrist will ask, does the child harm anybody or anything? You know, it's
yes,
just a standard question.
yeah.
And I asked one time, why is this question being asked?
Hmm,
And they said because if a child can harm an animal, it can harm another human being type thing. So it
really.
should like I think if we're capable of doing that to animals, are we capable of that to doing that to our fellow man?
Oh,
Maybe
well,
if we didn't do that if we didn't do that to animals, maybe we wouldn't do it to our fellow man either.
well, it'd be a good start, wouldn't it? As they say.
Yeah,
But certainly we obviously are capable of doing it to other people. Another thing I noticed when I was there was my grandson, my namesake, was running around with toy guns. I mean,
yeah,
elaborate AK-47s made of plastic. Now he's only 8, I think he is, on Christmas Day. But I heard him talking about nukes. Now, there's a step forward or backwards, whichever you want to look at it. You know,
yeah,
the idea of I've got a nuclear weapon, I'm going to blow you up, instead of the way we used to play it, like bang, bang, you're dead,
yeah,
and we're the cowboys and you're the Indians.
yeah.
I think everything in your life affects you. And I think if you're brought up to eat other animals and sort of treat them in ways that are actually cruel in the end, um, it can't be good for us. Certainly not good for
No,
certainly not
no,
good for the turkey, but
yeah,
it can't be that good for us. Okay,
yeah.
the sermon is over now, Pat. Let's
Uh,
move to the main stage. Um, a lot of papers have been released, as always, at this time of year. And among the Irish papers that have been released is one about Mary Robinson. And apparently now she was elected in, I'm pretty sure, 1991. Um,
mm.
and in 1983, she wanted to take up a UN role, United Nations role. And she was blocked from doing this by the government. And of course, then she left eventually in 1997, a few months before the end of her term in office. What do you think of that, Pat? Does that strike you as an unfair suppression of a woman's ambition, or do you feel that she should have been concentrating on the job she had, which is a pretty big one?
Jude, no, the latter. Jude, I actually met Mary Robinson when she was running for the presidency and all the rest of it,
Hmm.
and my other life, that is. And at that stage, Jude, I worked in RT, and Mary Robinson was considered one of the elite, if you know what I mean. And
Yeah.
I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. She was considered, one of the sort of modern sort of thinkers. She was high flyer. She was a senior counsel, a barrister. She was a law lecturer. She was all that sort of stuff,
Yeah.
and she was very progressive. And
Hmm.
she had I think she was invited to various universities in America and so on to lecture and all this sort of stuff.
She was
So
also very good looking,
exactly, and it
which
didn't
didn't
do her any
help,
harm. But
didn't it?
here's how is she? I think her mother, I think, was from Donegal, by the way. Anyway,
Was that right?
let's move
Well,
on.
father was from Mayo, I'm pretty
Mayo,
sure. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
but I'm just getting on the Donegal angle here. But anyway, so
so.
anyway, off she goes, runs for president, and within about 2 years, the UN come a calling and saying, "Look, we want you to co-chair this big international group to look at the future of the UN." I think it was your man Boutros Ghali issued the invitation,
Hmm.
and it was very prestigious and so on. And I'd say at that stage, Mary was bored shitless because Mary, being president is very ceremonial.
Mm.
You pull a curtain and you put a wee plaque. Opened by President Robinson, 50 years of Donegal heritage or something, and then she does the same in Mayo and so on.
Yeah.
Here's a woman who's highly intellectual, very, very bright, very academic, and said going around shaking hands with all these kids, school kids. I'd say she was bored out of her skull at that stage. So here was a chance to sort of flex her intellectual muscles again, the UN and so on.
Mm. Mm.
And she was dying to go. Anyway, bottom line of it all, Jude, is 4 or 5 years later, she left early. She left 2 months early and took up the chair, UN human rights chair.
Mm.
So Jude, it was quite obvious she wanted out from very early on.
Well,
And
what
it
do
is a wee
you
bit
what's
insulting.
your thoughts on that, Pat? What do you think?
Well, here I'm getting it. I'm going around the houses here, but bottom line, a wee bit insulting to the Irish people. Like
I would.
if you're president of Ireland, I don't think you should be double jobbing.
Mm. Well, she didn't actually double job, but
No,
the
but
fact you
she
say
wanted
is
to
that she
double
wanted to
job.
get out of there. But I see. I've got a problem with Mary Robinson, and that is that she resigned her seat as a senator, I think it was, because she felt that the unionists weren't getting enough say in things in the north.
Yeah.
I forget what it was. Was it the Good Friday Agreement or what was it? No, it can't be that. But anyway, she did
Mm,
resign her seat as a senator in sympathy with unionism in the North. Now,
mm,
a highly intelligent woman, I can't quite understand that. Of course, Conor
mm,
Cruiser-Bryan is another highly intellectual guy, and he ended up being a unionist as well. So I have that sort of prejudice against her. But try to leave aside that. I agree completely, Pat. You say she was probably bored, and of course, I would be amazed if she wasn't bored. But she knew that when she ran for
mm.
president. And she was only 2 years in the job. And it's not just that she was offered the new job of the UN, she wanted to take it.
Yeah.
And she left. She showed, emphatically by leaving a couple of months early that she really would have
Mm,
been out of there sooner if she could. Now, I'm sure she's
yeah.
doing it was a bigger job in the UN worldwide and all that. And I'm sure it was one that challenged her intellectual capacity more. So she was
Mm,
less bored. But I still feel quite strongly that, like it or lump it, the post of President of Ireland is an important uh, symbol for the
Pres-
Irish people.
yeah,
And
it's very prestigious. You're on a world stage. You're
yeah,
the first citizen of the country, and
yeah,
someone. I think if you ran for the role, the very least you should do is give it 100%. Not a couple of years in saying, "Oh shit, I want out of here."
that's right.
There's something. It's almost a derogation of duty or some sort of contempt for the role.
Mm.
And it doesn't look or reflect well on her.
It doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't. But then she's done great, good things in the UN and is forever
She
speak.
became one of the elders with people like Mandela. There's the Jimmy Carter for a couple of
Yeah.
years. Remember, they used to meet and sort of advise governments quietly and so on.
Uh-huh.
In fact, we would need them now, but anyway, it's too late.
Yeah. 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 Well, she's a fine woman and a fine intellect too. I'm not sure about her attitude with regard to the unionists, and I'm certainly not sure about her attitude towards being president of Ireland.
Well,
Uh,
Dr. Collins, I just read it about half an hour ago.
yeah.
Have you come across the concept of the BRICS countries?
The
Brazil,
BRICS
China,
countries.
Russia.
No, the
Yeah,
BRICS.
right.
Oh, I see. Yes. Yes.
Right,
Yes. Yes.
right. on the
Brazil,
1st of January,
Russia,
and the
India, and
China, yeah,
China.
and
Yeah.
right here's the thing, they are now, as of 1st of January 2025, there are more countries joining, and I wrote them down. Well, the main ones: Indonesia, Malaysia, Cuba will be joining the list.
Mhm.
Turkey has also been invited to join the list. And Jude, it's purely a reaction to the Americans continuing, what's happening in the Middle East and all the rest of it. And
Mhm.
Jude, I can see more and more countries joining BRICS. I really can. I think the West has just blown it in regard to Gaza.
Mhm.
But Jude, what happens down the track? Of Indonesia, which I think is the largest Muslim country in the world, as far as I remember,
Yeah.
there's something like 500 million people or something like that, and all that sort of those islands and so on. Then Turkey, which is I think it's got about 100 million people as well,
Hmm.
and there's I think it's seven other countries are joining, and dude, I can see a lot more African countries joining as well.
Well,
What's
do
your
you see it
view
as a
of
bad thing or a good thing, Pat?
someone? I am not sure. That's why I'm raising it.
Mm.
Like, by the way, I see the Americans and what's happening in recent times. I think it's disgusting, but I'm not sure Russia and China are going to be great friends of the West either. So, like,
Mm. Well, by and large, I think I'd like to be optimistic and say I see it positively. I think it's better that countries have alliances rather than have warfare or
yeah,
hostilities. But
yeah,
yeah, it is a kind of a counterbalance to the U.S. But you see, we don't know about the U.S. anymore. The U.S. may, under Trump, he's forever shouting about it, that he's going to be more an isolationist president. So he'll be
yeah,
looking for ways not to cooperate with other countries. Whereas, as you say, the BRIC countries are adding to their number. You see, if it was a question of trade and that kind of thing, I would applaud that. I think that's good, even if it's only a half of the world, if you like, and the other half being the sort of Western world. Uh, if it's to encourage people to get ready for some kind of mass world war, I think I'd be a bit
mm,
less impressed with that. Um, for so long, maybe it's got to do with the Cold War. We were told that we belong to the free world. So you
yeah.
got the
The
impression
Democratic
that all the rest of it now, regardless of who they were, they didn't belong to the free world. They therefore
world,
were under subjugation of some kind, which wasn't true at
yeah,
all, of course. There was parts of it were very much under subjugation, but not that many. Um,
yeah,
I sort of there's a sneaking regard for the fact that these countries are coming together. Anyway, you see, I think they're in a way it's good that they're part of one unit because Brazil will. You'd like to think that the muscle of India and Brazil would act as a counterpoint or a counterbalance to what might be the more warlike attitudes of China or Russia,
mm,
and it's just like the EU. There are, what do you call it, weights and
counterbalances, yeah,
balances
yeah.
because some countries tend one way and some countries come another, and they tend to have to compromise. So I would kind of welcome it, I think. Besides, I'm sick to death of the US being the world's policeman. I really am.
Yeah, no, I think it's a total abuse of power by the Americans. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, that's pissed a lot of people off. But dude, here's a funny thing, and I suppose we're going to come on to it anyway. Did you read Trump's Christmas message?
No.
If you want to see someone totally insane, read his Christmas message. I think it's a serious worry. I really genuinely do. If I see Trump, I deal with some of Trump's supporters on social media,
Hmm.
and my point to them would be, had Donald Trump or Joe Biden or Kamala Harris come out with the crap that Trump came out with on Christmas, basically, Jude, what he's saying is he wants to take over Greenland, and he also wants to take over the Panama Canal.
Hmm.
That the Americans are paying too much for using the Panama Canal and whatever, whatever, whatever.
Hmm.
Jude, you were saying he's an isolationist. He seems to be sort of flexing his muscles and really trying to bully small nations. He's also insulted Justin Trudeau. By the way, I think he called him the governor of Canada. I think he's prime minister of Canada. I presume
Ah,
that
he
was a
is the prime
deliberate
minister,
insult.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
so
they
Jude,
called they called Canada the 51st state.
Yeah, 51st state, and he said if they were the 51st state, their taxes would be cut by 60% and their trade would go way up. Like and then remember then he referred to Mexicans as murderers and rapists,
Oh, yeah.
and African countries as shithole countries, and
Hmm.
so on. Judas, when you this man is now going into the next 4 years. We in the world now, like that's why in the context of BRICS, will a lot more countries in Africa sort of say we want nothing to do with them.
Well, it'll depend on what sort of help we would give them. Nobody would have anything to do with them except that they thought it would be to their advantage. And I think that's why he was voted in by all those people, millions of them, is they think oddly. They think that he will make their lives better. He won't, I'm sure. He'll make the rich richer and he'll make the poor poorer. And how that message hasn't gone through after him serving one term already, I do not know. But
Mm,
he'll alienate an awful lot of countries one way or another.
mm,
The question is, what effect will that have? Will it impoverish them, or will it urge them to sort of get together and sort of flex their muscles or find ways of cooperating better? Like, for
yeah,
example, they say, I don't even understand this, but I gather that is it China that has this Belt and Road scheme thing in
yeah,
Africa? What is that,
yeah.
Pat? You know what that is?
China is it's economic soft power rather than military soft power.
Yeah.
They're going to joint ventures with thing. We'll build the roads if you give us something. They've done a
Mm.
lot of it up in Queensland and Australia.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I think it's Queensland and the Northern Territories. No bauxite and various minerals that the Chinese need. The
Mm.
Chinese built roads, they built infrastructure and all the rest, and that was the deal that they would provide the money if Australia would provide. And it's a different way of doing things. And they
Mm.
provide schools and they fund hospitals and all the rest of it. It's a very different way, and they've done the same in Africa. So, Jude, it's going to be very interesting to see how they sort all this out.
Mm.
America uses sort of threats and muscles and military might. China does it the other way, and I think it's a much more constructive way.
Certainly, literally and metaphorically, more constructive way, all
Uh,
right. It brings me back to our own dear land, Pat. The fact that the South has offered, well, given the North tens of millions of pounds in order to build the A5. They've done the help with the waterways throughout Ireland. What else have they done? Um,
they've
well,
offered 40 million for McGee College in
I
Derry.
was just going to say that. Yeah, yeah. So it's hard. I think it's hard if somebody if somebody says, you know, think of us well. Most of us won't believe them or will say, well, maybe I will, maybe I won't. But if that person comes in and starts making your life better,
Yeah,
and sort of implicitly says, "Let me be your friend." It's hard to resist that. I know there are people in
yeah,
the north who have always said, "Oh, I'd rather eat grass than get you mean
mm,
relying on the south of Ireland or any notion of unity." But I think it's quite a smart move for the south to show what they can do, how they can help the north, and to. It's also sort of galling, I suppose. You could see it as
uh,
being here's handouts for the poor north. They can't handle things. But I mean,
yeah,
that's self-evident. They never could. That's why we get,
yeah.
whatever it is from London every year.
Yeah, but to digress because it's on my head. Recently there was a report. We it's a topic we have discussed with Garvin Downey and others,
Hmm.
Stephen Kelly. Know this McGee thing. There was a report just now that you mentioned Stephen Kelly's report. It's a sort of an interim report about what they should do about McGee.
Yeah.
Just for our two listeners who don't know what's going on here, McGee College is I think was founded in the 18 something.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be the third leg of the stool, and the University of Ulster. It
Yeah.
is by far the weakest leg in the stool, and it's been deliberately defunded for years. Courses have been taken away from it, and now, and when Garvin Downey and various other people started up a campaign for an independent university for Derry, now suddenly there's interest from right, left, and centre, but particularly from the Ulster University authorities. And basically, I think the Derry University Group has succeeded in getting 40 million promised. Now, I don't think it's committed, but they haven't spent it yet for McGee. And anyway, bottom line
From
was
the
the
University of Ulster, that is it?
no, no, from the Irish government.
Oh, very good. Yeah.
Aye, but the bottom line is the thing is now there's this great interest from the university authorities and the North and the Assembly that they're going to develop McGee up to 10,000 students. They're currently only about 4 or 5,000. But anyway, bottom line again, the last day, Derry University Group had 10 questions for the people who put together the interim report and for the authorities, and namely was you haven't delivered in the past for Derry. Where are they going to be the concrete steps now?
Hmm.
Basically, if we don't reach 10,000 students by 2030, will you move students from other campuses to Derry?
Hmm.
Where's your commitments on funding? You're going to approach the Irish government for more, etc., etc. They want all these questions, and Judith, the thought occurred to me the last day. Tom Collins, who's the former editor of the
Irish news.
Irish News,
Yeah.
he had a column in the last day, and he says, "When did any decision made for Belfast ever empower Derry?"
Hmm.
I thought it was a great point because, dude, there's this idea all boats rise, and it doesn't happen in Northern Ireland. If a decision's made for Belfast benefit, it harms Derry because 83% of the students and 83%, these are rough figures,
Hmm.
83% of the expenditure on third level education is in Belfast. That means Derry, I think, gets 6%. The second city in Northern Ireland gets 6%, and Belfast gets 83%.
God. I still feel, I mean, I take a point that the South is putting money into the campus in McGee. But you mentioned it that the Garvin Downey's had a notion of a university straddling the border. That is to say,
Yeah,
presumably having
an independent
Letterkenny
university.
as one of its campuses.
Yeah. Well, basically, what Garvin and various other people, I keep referring to Garvin because that's the guy we talked to, but
Hmm.
there are other people involved, a guy called Colin McPhilly, and there's a committee. Anyway, bottom line is they want an independent university with independent oversight, with clear lines of funding, spending, etc., courses, a restructuring of the university that provides, some of the courses that were taken away from it to be returned. A thing called Encore, which was about a peace project, which was set up specifically by John Hume, Tip O'Neill, and all that. It was
Hmm.
set up for McGee. It was taken from McGee surreptitiously, moved to Belfast, and so on. It was downright disgraceful.
Hmm.
Anyway, but the bottom line is now that we're sort of at the sort of nexus period where we go from here. But it's a really interesting social, economic, and political question because for years Derry has been neglected. That
Oh,
is
yeah.
factually correct. The economic
Yeah.
situation, the unemployment situation, disposable
Broadcasting.
incomes, all the indices that you need
Hmm.
prove it. And it's a very interesting to see where we'll go next because I like the Derry University Group has claimed we've had enough promises, enough, basically a love horse and you'll sort of
Yeah. Yeah.
you'll eat
Yeah.
grass.
Hmm.
Like it hasn't happened, so it's
Hmm.
going to be interesting in the next. And by the way, one of the big problems, Connor Murphy is the Department of Economics. He's the guy who's going to provide the funding. It's going to be an interesting question for the Shinners. Will they provide the money for Derry?
Oh, well, if they've any sense, they will. Well, I suppose if you're saying, will the Shinners give them the money, they'd have to get the assent, wouldn't they? Or would they, off
Yeah,
the DUP and company? But I think I applaud Garvin's notion of a border, university straddling the border. But
yeah.
I'm not sure about the independent part. Uh, I mean, if the university at McGee stays where it is and was developed, it'd have to be part, I think, of the University of Ulster. If, on the other hand, it became a sort of a straddling the border one, and there was a lot of
Mm.
input from the south, I think there'd be a strong case they would make for making it part of the what do they call it now? I don't know.
The Atlantic Technical University.
I but no, I'm thinking of this part of the universe, Cork, Dublin,
In the what is the
University of
University of
Ireland.
Ireland?
Aye.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think it'd have to plug into some bigger unit, really, rather than to say,
Well, I think what the Derry University Group as basically saying a cross-border university with of independent oversight, with money from the south and from the north,
Mm.
and basically, hey, Jude, Lough is administered by the north and the south. Why
Mm.
can't a university be
Ah,
done the same?
yeah, 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 yeah. Well, I'm just putting that in as a kind of a point that need to keep in mind. That the idea of being totally independent is a pretty much a non-starter, I think. And I would urge them to aim to be part of the University of Ireland, not the University of
Yeah.
Ulster. Of course, University of Ulster isn't bloody the University of Ulster. It's the University of the Six Counties, just as Radio Ulster is Radio Six Counties. Okay, Pat, we're nearly
Jude,
the
and
end.
maybe it's the University of Belfast as well, rather than the University of the Six Counties. Yeah.
Yeah, there's that
Uh,
too. Okay, listen, Pat, looking back over the year, right? When you're looking back over the year and trying to decide what was good about it, would you be worried about the man who is on the cover of Time this week or this month, one Donald J. Trump? Would you be
uh,
worried about him? Because some people say, "Oh, Jesus, he's gone mad already, and he isn't even in office yet." Others
yeah.
say things like, don't discount the role of Congress. They point out, for example, he's got a majority in the House of Representatives, but it's only 22-20. And it takes,
Uh,
a few really stalwart Republicans who decide, no, I'm not going to take this crap. And that could change those balance there. In the Senate, they've got a bigger number, but not that big, 53 to 47. So while he may talk about tighter immigration and tax cuts for the rich and deporting 1 million immigrants, I'm not sure that the House of Representatives and the Senate will sit by and allow that to happen. Do you think so?
don't buy it at all. I think the Republican Party is now. I don't think there's anybody in the Republican Party has the balls to stand up to Donald J. Trump. If can you imagine some short senator saying, "Oh no, I'm not agreeing with this," and Trump starts doing his social media stuff. The guy will probably be shot dead the next morning. They're all scared of him. They run for cover. They're so far up his backside, they can see Australia. As far as I'm concerned, the way they're looking at things, dude, it seems increasingly um, like look at Lindsey Graham and there was the other guy, the guy from Kentucky, I can't remember his name. They hated him, but hey, they fell into line. See now, Lindsey Graham is his biggest supporter. Dude,
Mm.
they know these people have no backbone, no principle, whatever it takes to stay in power. The old one. What's the first priority for any politician? To get re-elected. Well, these
Yeah.
guys, that's their priority. And
Well,
Jude, I think Trump has become so dominant in the Republican Party.
mm,
Principles have gone out the window. Morality's gone out the window. Jude, when you hear a guy, apparently, by the way, in for his inauguration service, his latest grift is that he's 100,000 to attend it. Everything's money, money, money. He got 100 and something like 120 million from Elon Musk.
yeah, yeah.
This is a guy who has what had sex with a porn star, has committed adultery more times than you could shake a stick at, and yet he's running around selling Bibles and so on, and saying, and he
Yeah.
says Jesus has chosen me, and
Aye.
the clowns and I mean they're clowns. People buy that, Jude. They are clowns.
But you're talking about the politicians, and the
Yeah,
Republican politicians been
yeah.
scared of them and afraid to step out of line. I'm going to make a prediction, Pat. Could be wrong, but I'll make a prediction. I think by the end of his term in office, the Republican Party will be deeply disillusioned with him, and I think they'll be open, many of them, in their disillusionment. I predict that. I may be totally wrong.
Jude, I would love to agree, but hold on, Jude. See, remember John, in the last thing, they said it was mayhem and chaos. And
Mm,
he lost two or three chiefs of staff.
yeah.
He's military chief Mark Miley. I read the book. He rang around China and India and saying that they were not going to nuke anybody because he was so concerned about Trump's rhetoric.
Yeah.
John Bolton, his Secretary of State, called him a clown. Mike Pompeo said he was a fucking idiot, and not exact words, by the way, and so on. And yet he gets re-elected by the American people.
Well, Elon Musk wasn't that complimentary about him either until he became his best
Yeah,
mate. But that's what
yeah,
that's what I mean. If they actually test the guy. And if they're now sort of bending the knee and kissing the ring, it's perfectly possible. I mean, I don't see how it won't happen that he'll screw things up, and that the Republican Party will eventually grow stronger and stronger and say to themselves, geez, people are going to, really kick our asses
But you
next time
look,
out.
he promoted Matt Gates, a guy who's now the recent report said that he was doing drugs and had sex with a 17-year-old girl in, I think, in the office in Congress, and Jude, that's the first thing. Then what he
Pat, don't be too hard now, because don't forget Bill Clinton.
I but right, I but hold on, Bill Clinton was. Uh,
He had sex with, he said to
Yeah,
American
I did
people,
not
I
have
didn't
sex
have
with him,
sex with that
but
woman.
but hold on. And then he put on as Pete Hegsworth, or we call the guy Secretary of Defense. He's a guy who's hasn't held public office anywhere, not even a councillor. He's a Fox News presenter. He's going to be Secretary of Defense.
I mean, don't forget,
He's
don't forget,
but,
Trump himself had never held office, nothing, and he was
that's what I'm saying. He's
catapulted
a
into it.
clown.
And it's
Yeah,
not as
but
if
then and
people.
what do you call it? He's got a woman who's coming in who has said in the past that Assad was a good guy, and Putin's a sort of good guy. And what was the other one? I can't remember. Robert Kennedy, a guy who says vaccinations are stupid. Let's go back to having fucking, what do you call it, Jude, smallpox and
Mm,
diphtheria
mm,
and
mm.
children dying in the first couple of years.
Well, you see, the thing is,
Let's go back to like die like a medieval peasant.
if
No,
he's put in charge of medical affairs, so to speak, I
and
mean,
he's no qualifications.
it's going to be so obviously a bad move that the American people, I don't see them standing by with that. I know everybody says, and it does seem that way, that he has done all the wrong things, and yet he has sailed through and been elected. But again, I don't think that another 4 years of him will lead people to think any more highly of him. Okay, Pat, we've only a minute or so left. Name one other event or person from the last 12 months that you would remember.
Dude, the only thing for me, and it dominates totally, is Gaza. I don't think good nor bad. It's just, Jude, I think about it a lot. I think what's happened there has destroyed the Western world. I really genuinely do, because I don't think anybody's going to believe a word Western politicians say now.
I suppose that, yeah, I was going to say, I was trying to think of more sort of benign things like that French woman who came out at the time she was raped. We've talked
Uh,
about this and how
yeah,
courageous she was, etc. But yeah, I guess so. It's, it's hard to put words on the disgust you
yeah.
feel with that. The thing that's even worse than that is that Israel just seems to be going on a rampage through any country at once. There's a
I
nice
touched Yemen
thought for the new
yesterday.
year.
Yeah.
Hmm?
Aye. And then killed 5 journalists yesterday morning, even though
Uh,
the van they were in was clearly marked press.
Okay. Wish both our listeners, both our viewers, a happy new year, and we'll reinforce it next time, Pat.
Hi, Jude.
Happy new
Happy New
year.
Year.
Okay.
See you Monday.
Okay. Okay.
Bye, Jude.
Right. All the best.